It's the Masters Tour in Las Vegas, live at the Link Hotel. I'm Matt Zapperbull, and joining me for this one is Derek Brown. And we are amidst our top 8 here. We're trying to cut down to 4 of them, though, Derek.
We are. We're done with most of the double elimination stuff that we had at the start of this top 8. Now it's a very simple win, and you're through to the semi-finals. Lose, and you are out of the Masters Tour.
Well, that makes it super easy for me.
It does. It makes it very difficult for these players, though.
In fact, I don't even really need to say anything. You could just look at the graphic and tell what's going on here. Tom is already out of the group, as you could tell by that crown that's above his portrait and name.
Yeah, the winner of the group. Tom has been playing some pretty good Hearthstone. I think we can both agree over his course here in the Masters Tour. I liked a lot of what I've seen, in addition to his very strong tertiary deck building. Having an anti-mage part of his mage deck, I think was a real stroke of genius that got him through to being the winner of Group A. For posesi and Kalàxz, however, both also on the mage, it's a little bit more difficult for them, obviously both falling to Tom 60229.
Yeah, and Mage certainly has been one of the talks of the tournament in terms of performance and class and deck choice of this one. You know, a ton of warriors showed up to the field here. It was about a third of the field overall was some variant of warrior deck, and the Mage decks look like they've been just absolutely trouncing that, and now they're battling out to find out which one of them is going to have the liberty of going through. We're taking a look at posesi's first. Posesi finished 11-1 during the Swiss standings, the only player to achieve the 11-win mark.
And he's got a pretty consistent looking build of Mage. The double Sandbinder is the most interesting inclusion to me in the primary deck list. But generally I'm quite a big fan of just a lot of 2 of the good cards in this primary deck.
Just clean.
Very clean.
All 2 ofs except legendaries.
Yeah.
Oh, you love to see that. Just beautiful. Easy to read, you know exactly what the deck is doing. Secondary and tertiary list, exactly the same thing.
Yeah, a little bit weirder in the tertiary deck with the Spellwood, Jeweler, and Hakar very clearly countering the OTK Paladins, which is an interesting idea to build an entire side deck for, considering there weren't all too many of them. But it's clearly working out for him anyway.
Yeah, and taking a look at Kalàxz's deck, it's pretty darn similar. One of the things that is notable here is the swap out of the Sandbinder slot. It's become Twilight Drake. A lot of players use that to try to focus on just a more resilient threat at the 4-drop slot that starts to deliver some pressure. So this is a different take on it, and honestly, I think the contrast of those two, that's something that I'm actually hoping happens, is that they don't have nuts draws, they have their prime 4-drops, and you see which one comes out on top afterwards.
I agree. I think my favorite week of seeing the Mage mirrors in Grandmasters was kind of like around week 3, when there were a lot of snap freezes in there, so there was a lot of counterplay being thrown back and forth. However, it takes a slightly different form in this week with a couple of new inclusions, especially from the Rise of the Mechs patch with the 5-mana Luna's Pocket Galaxy in there for Kalàxz. We've seen a bit of a weird relationship with Luna's Pocket Galaxy. I don't think it's been quite as powerful as I would have expected it to be. But as I said, a lot of the time it's the way it makes your opponent play rather than the actual effect itself. Because after your opponent has played the Luna's Pocket Galaxy, you kind of have to get aggressive. You have to finish the game very quickly, or they're just going to out-tempo you in the late game. And it's kind of forced some players to play expend their resources a bit too aggressively in some of the games. And also, it can just get you a 0-mana Mountain Giant, and then you win the game.
To me, it has like a twofold effect to it, where when I look at it face up, number one is you don't want to give your opponent time to play Luna's Pocket Galaxy. That means that you typically want to play more aggressive, which oftentimes your hand does not give you the liberty to do efficiently. And so you could be falling into a trap right from the get-go. The second one is if you were fortunate enough to play Luna's Pocket Galaxy, what that means is you probably weren't under pressure, and means you can get a major payoff later in the game. And so to me, the threat of that card's power is really the reason why it's finding its way into these decks.
And I think the real powerhouse plays from Luna's Pocket Galaxy that we've seen have actually been from Dog more so than Kalàxz in this tournament, because he has 2 Doomsayers in his deck, which make for a very beautiful setup of turn 3 or 4 Doomsayer, and then Luna's Pocket Galaxy, or coin Luna's Pocket Galaxy afterwards.
You know, Derek, you and I have talked about this a lot, casting Grandmasters in Europe, with how Mage decks were going to evolve, how all the players were saying, I don't think it's the final version, there's a lot of different ways you can go. Even at this tournament, that was really an emergence of like a new archetype of these Mage decks that came into the fray, where a couple of players opted to cut Mana Cyclone, and they cut away like Banana Buffoon looking stuff, instead just went straight towards Doomsayers and more of a Freeze Mage-esque style of build, where instead of relying on burn spells necessarily, it's the big powerful minion effects you get. So your burn spells are still, you know, Mountain Giant and Conjurer's Calling, but a much more defensive package outright with Acolyte of Pain in there instead of like Banana Buffoon and the potential to get aggressive.
Yeah, I think that the Freeze Mage is in such an interesting spot at the moment where I actually don't see it as the next step of Mana Cyclone Mage. I see it as like a divergent path.
Yeah.
I think they both have their spot in the meta, and I think for here in Masters Tour Las Vegas, Dog's Freeze Mage was a fantastic bring. With the high amount of warriors in there and the fact it seems to do relatively well in the mirror or against other Cyclone mages, I think it was a really, really good bring. In Grandmasters, I'm not quite so sure if it will slot in there because obviously you are playing only 2 opponents each week as opposed to the, 12 opponents that they had to play in the Swiss. Yeah, and it could be any of 284 players or whatever it was here. So I think maybe in Grandmasters we'll see more of a trend towards Cyclone Mage, but I really love the new inclusion from Dog.
Yeah, the story here for the deck lists on paper is going to be the consistency of board presence with Twilight Drake versus the consistency of draw against Sandbinder.
Yeah.
So it is 2 different takes. You know, Posesi did finish with a better overall score in this one, but when you're looking at 12 rounds of play, if you make the top 8 cut, in my opinion, you've done just about as equally good as anybody who shared a record and couldn't make it on tie breaks on that top 8 spot as well.
I agree. Posesi has clearly been having a very good tournament. Worth saying that it appears to be that his biggest weakness here, through now that we are in top 8, is nerves when he's on the stage. We saw him in the last series miss what was very likely to be a lethal with Conjurer's Calling on an opposing Rabble Bouncer. And even if he didn't find that lethal, he messed up the turn by not playing Ziliax and died to a Pyroblast. Basically, after a very well-played game of Mage, which he almost clawed himself back into from a very miserable position, he lost it right at the final spot. And if he can keep his head cool, stay in the game, then I think he's in with a really good shot of taking this. Because he knows what he's doing. He's a very, very strong player, but he has to just make sure that he's not getting flustered. And in terms of the start of this game here for Posesi, being on the coin is obviously very nice indeed. And Double Mountain Giant, while this isn't even generally considered the best hand you can have anymore, I think with the Sorcerer's Apprentice, Banana Buffoon, Mana Cyclone nonsense generally considered a little bit higher now. If he can find himself a Conjurer's Calling with this hand, he's looking to be in a very, very good spot.
Yeah, Kalàxz's hand I don't think is shaping up this game.
I agree.
This could be just one of those spots where you end up with an unfortunate situation. And, you know, Snap Freeze I think could help buy back from that position. But I think overall, Kalàxz just looking for card draw on this one. I kind of wanted to talk about the form of the players a little bit in their Hearthstone careers. You know, for Posesi, he's been in the playoffs a few times without any, you know, real notable performances there.
Yeah.
He's had some tournaments outside of that on, you know, more circuit-based things where he's had some pretty reasonable performances.
Yeah, I think he got 3rd in WESG as the big one.
But honestly, like, this is the performance for him. Like, if you were looking for a breakout spot to do it, the first Masters Tour here in Vegas, like, I don't really think he could have done much better, considering the position he's in right now. For Kalàxz, you know, a big part of the French community that's there. Some pretty decent performances on tour stops last year. I think it was like a couple of top 4s throughout some of the European region tour stops that took place.
Yeah, we saw Trek take a win in Take TV, the Germany tour stop, and Maverick, although a Belgian player, very much part of the French-speaking community, taking a win at DreamHack as well.
So this tournament, really big deal. I mean, this single tournament, you know, if you win this one, easily the most money that you've achieved in terms of prize pool from a single event.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same prize pool as the World Championship that Hunter Ace just won. Pretty much.
Yeah, the same prize pool. It's just spread out differently.
Yes,
you know?
yeah.
But if you want to talk about World Championships, I mean, when you know, Osaka and Firebat won the World Championships, that's the same prize pool we have here. $100,000 up top. You know, you talked about, you know, Posesi perhaps showing a little bit of nerves while on stage. You know, I don't think I can blame him.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah,
that was not me trying to, you know, fire shots at him or anything. It's incredibly nerve-wracking. But when you're up against this caliber of player, you're just not really allowed to make those kind of mistakes.
Sorcerer's Apprentice sticks in the face of a mountain giant. That's not the way you envision it sticking. And so I think for Kalàxz, he has to make a choice this turn. You know, how much do you fear a Conjurer's Calling in this position from Kalàxz? You know, I'm looking at Sea Giant. I'm looking at a pair of Mirror Entities with an Archmage Antonidas. I feel like you want to delay this game as much as you can in terms of the disaster point that Posesi could give to you.
I agree. I think this is a miserable situation to be using one of the best cards in this matchup of Frost Nova, but he doesn't have much of a choice. If there was a Conjurer's Calling, he could pretty much just give up the game there.
I guess that's one of my questions is when can you play around Conjurer's Calling and when can you not? Like, you have a tool to answer a single giant right now.
Yeah.
Should you answer a single giant?
I think he should. I think that was the correct play because the punish for your opponent having it is the ultimate punish. You basically just lose the game.
You just always have to respect it?
I think so. I mean, okay, so this...
No wonder the deck's so good.
The variable there is how bad of a situation do you think you're in if you don't go for, or if you do go for it, sorry. Do you ever win the game if you play the Frost Nova and Snap Freeze? To which I think the answer is yes, very possibly.
Well, this is shaping up pretty interestingly because Posesi right now isn't going to really have a wide board presence. And Kalàxz can add a second Sorcerer's Apprentice right now, which if one of the two sticks, he's able to play Archmage and double Mirror Entity behind it. I think this is an opportunity for Kalàxz.
The other line of play he could consider would be double Mirror Image Sea Giant on this turn.
Wow.
A lot of divergent paths he could go for, both of which have their upsides.
And you can see Kalàxz looking at the screen. Like he's figuring out both iterations right now and trying to figure out which one's better. And honestly, I didn't see the Sea Giant one. You just pointed out. I'm like,
I didn't see your one.
I like Sea Giants. This is the dynamic we have too. I always mention the thing afterwards. You mention the thing now.
Yeah, yeah.
How do I always mention the thing afterwards instead of the thing right now? The Sea Giant's better. Oh, the Sea Giant's so much better.
I think I'm actually coming around to your play more. I think sticking Antonidas would be like, because he only has one giant in play.
You can just play it next turn though.
Yeah, I guess you can actually.
Yeah, is this just the best of both? This is so much better than holding on for the Antonidas.
You're right, Admirable. I am the best.
Yeah, you're right, Derek. I'm dumb. See that? I bet, I wonder how many games I've cost myself now because I just had that epiphany. Just because I saw something good I can do next turn, does that mean I can do it next turn with something else better now? Oh my gosh, my whole life is a question now. Having like an existential crisis because of this match.
I'm sorry, Admirable, for breaking your entire life.
Posesi going to take 2 spells. Interesting. What is he looking for there?
I mean, I like that he's slowing down because...
Oh, he's trying to just fuel the Luna.
Yeah. I mean, he was starting off the turn looking at just Snap Frost Nova, and I really like doing something else first, because there's a bunch of cards that generate cards or draw cards for him, and Frost Nova in this instance was really just not that powerful.
So I guess the question for Posesi now is actually attacking a minion.
That's true. Good point.
If he attacks a minion, it opens up space for Kalàxz to have his own Conjurer's Calling, which I'm certain is exactly on Posesi's mind as it's been on Kalàxz's.
Conjurer's Calling does still get the extra 8/8. It's not like he has 7 minions in play.
Can't double do it though.
Yeah, I think I prefer overall leaving it up. We've seen the reasoning why generally in the Mage Mirror you don't go double Mirror Image or Khadgar Mirror Image because it just fills up so much of your board with minions that you can't kill.
I think Kalàxz has got one play. The thing about it is your opponent just generated some spells and they have 4 minions in play and they have 2 bananas. They actually can just clear off the Antonidas. So is Ziliax like a better defensive measure here? Something we didn't really talk about was that Kalàxz playing the Sea Giant and he could not play Mountain Giant this turn.
He can't guarantee clear off the Antonidas, right? Because you'd kill off the 2 mirror images and then with the 4 things in play. But I agree, it's very likely that the Antonidas would end up dying.
Well, I'm looking at it from Kalàxz's perspective too about foregoing attacks in a position. Do you want to keep their board full to mitigate? It's a chain that of like how much space is too much space on your opponent's board that they've used up. Like that's been such a real thing in the matchup that I feel like I tunnel on it too much because I constantly see players trying to abuse that factor. And Kalàxz, I think, recognizes it's the time to get aggressive. My Sea Giant's unchecked.
I love this from Kalàxz. I think clearing off the minions was absolutely the way to go.
Oh no. Oh no. Well, I mean, when you go for a counterattack in a bad spot, you are vulnerable. There's no way Kalàxz could have avoided that.
This is how you start. It draws a card and costs no mana. Conjurer's Calling is pretty spicy.
That's not going to end well.
Does he Sorcerer's Apprentice first?
Well, I think what he's trying to focus on right now is how does he draw to the second Frost Nova so that he can actually take advantage of the board that he's got.
Yeah, okay.
He can trade off the 2/2s because the Ziliax is there.
Sorry. Yeah, I forgot about the Ziliax. This is fine. This is fine. Because I was just afraid that he would run out of board space and wouldn't be able to generate enough pressure for a 2-turn lead. But yeah, I like this a lot.
And remember about the Frost Nova conundrum. If you are the first player to use Frost Nova, you need to capitalize on the Frost Nova. If that chain starts and Kalàxz gets the last freeze, that's when Kalàxz will win the game.
Posesi again, the rope has been his greatest enemy so far here in the Masters Tour Las Vegas.
Definitely agree with the Frost Nova here. You banana up to protect the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Yeah. And I think there is merit to foregoing attacks, but I think there is more merit to clearing out and making sure that these giants threaten to connect.
For Kalàxz, even if he finds himself a Frost Nova, he's unable to go Antonidas Frost Nova on the same turn, which would be so crucial.
Luna, you just have to Mana Cyclone for
Luna
nothing?
Cyclone. Like, if he goes Luna Cyclone, plays the second Apprentice, maybe he can get the God draw of just a bunch of spells.
I mean, this hand won't stay alive right now.
The future is ours.
I
The
think
vanilla
Kalàxz,
Cyclone never feels good, although it does sound delicious.
well, there's no 10 drops you can get in this spot.
Yep. He's going for the Doomsayer.
Behold the tools of creation.
You know, sometimes you just got to make big plays. There was no defensive measure that Kalàxz could have had in that spot.
Yeah.
Actually 0. So he rips it. It doesn't work out.
And whether or not he's actually dead on this turn.
Counting 20...
28? 29?
Yeah, I'm counting 29 damage. Oh my goodness.
1 damage off lethal.
Whoa.
Always the way.
Does that mean that Posesi has to trade stuff then? Oh! I always forget.
There we go. There we go. He found
Only
the
Wisps.
lethal.
Wisps are the only zero-cost minions. And so if you want to clear out one of those taunts, Conjurer's Calling always succeeds in wiping away one of them.
Lovely play.
That also makes me question my whole life. How many times have I seen that or missed that?
I mean, this is a great redemption story for Posesi after he missed a lethal with a Conjurer's Calling an opponent's minion in his first match of the day, turning it around with what was, well, not an especially difficult lethal to spot, but he got it.
It is a potentially mislethal on the Rabble Bouncer. Your opponent can fetch more taunts in that situation. And this is exactly what I saw from Posesi earlier yesterday. Late in the day in the first spot where he had to play off, that's exactly how he won a game. He Conjures Calling a Mirror Image to push through that extra damage.
Yeah.
Game 1 over to Posesi in this one, who in that game, you could definitely tell it was consistency of draw that ended up mattering. Now, how much the Sandbinder contributed, it was null in that game. But you're not always going to have situations where, you know, both players have ideal draws or when both players are missing and having well below average draws. You know, I think a big portion of win rate with strong strategies like that is just to have consistency, to be doing a relatively same thing every game.
Yeah, I think, you know, for Kalàxz, you talk about consistency. This is why Mage is not the most consistent of decks. Sometimes it gets these draws that just don't get there at all.
Yeah.
I think the real decision point for him was whether he goes for Counterspell or Snap Freeze off of the magic trick early on. I think he made the right choice by going for the Snap Freeze instead of the Counterspell, even though that can be a very strong card in the matchup. But from there on in, I think it was really just the game ran away from him. Posesi was doing everything right, making sure he locked his opponent out of the game.
Yeah. I wonder if the game state changes if he doesn't present a Sea Giant on the turn he did as well.
Oh,
like,
yeah, I guess that's the other big decision.
Like, how does
point.
Posesi actually respond to that? You know, is he going to potentially respond weaker, but like, oh, there's no pressure on the other side, so I can take the game slower and build a stronger position?
Yeah.
Or does he feel like he needs to answer back with the Luna? So if the answer is he's going to go with the Luna, then, well, you play the Sea Giant.
Yeah.
If the answer is he might take it slower and try to draw, I wonder if the Antonidas changes that chain. I mean, I'm looking at super fringe scenarios when I offer up that thought. But the point I'm really trying to demonstrate is that what you do greatly affects what your opponent does.
Right.
And so that, to me, is the greatest skill in Hearthstone, is being able to recognize how will my opponent respond if I make one play versus another. And I think that's just a lot of what this match is about.
It really is. When you're both doing such powerful things, the one weakness of them is they can get a little bit predictable as to what you're going to do.
Yeah. Both players sticking to their primary deck. In this matchup, they have built their main deck to be just the overall push my game plan strategy.
Yep.
And in the Mage Mirror matches, I think even in the face of tech cards, that has often still been one of the stronger choices, is to not water down your deck at all and just push straight forward.
Yeah, some of the weaker tech decisions we've seen in the Mage with you and I in Grandmasters was when people were putting double Big Game Hunter in their Mage to counter the Mage Mirror, which just felt a little too situational, I think we can both agree, because a lot of the time they just go for wide boards. They don't even play the Giants in order to be hit with the Big Game Hunters. So I can agree that a more consistent, less lower tech card game plan is perfectly valid.
Kalàxz thinking about coin Arcane Intellect into the Mana Cyclone with Elemental Invocation. He's going for it.
I like it. I think the only real consideration for him here was if he wants to go coin Luna's Pocket Galaxy, because this play was really powerful, and I think he's happy to make it. He was just wondering if the coin Galaxy was more powerful. But wow, that is a premium selection.
That is insane. So he now has a way to contest a Luna on curve. He
Yes.
has a Conjurer's Calling that's been created, and he's got a Snap Freeze for if Posesi goes for a single big giant. That is insane. That's one of the best possible outcomes.
Admirable, that is actually insane.
That is actually one of the, like, if you could go through a Mage collection and pick 3 cards,
You couldn't choose much better than that for the mirror.
you might consider this as a combination. Now, you'd probably replace Icicle with like Frostbolt
You'd
or
pick like
something.
Frost Nova, I think, is the one thing you could do to improve it.
But the fact that he has a way to contest a Luna on curve here, like, I think that's a meritus of one of your thoughts. My opponent plays turn 3 Luna. Well, I want to kill it, so a damage spell.
Wow. I think the only one that trumps that was in Grandmaster's Ball Control's Cyclone against a Warrior, where I think he got like 2 Power of Creations and 3 Conjurer's Callings or something absurd.
He
like
also
that.
created like 8 spells.
That's true.
Yeah, like you're bound to get something valuable when you make enough. Like his was clearly above the curve. Then, but this is like 3 cards. That's just insane.
Yeah.
I'm very worried for Posesi now. I don't like being worried for players who tries to be out. Yeah, taking full advantage too. Mana Wraith.
Ooh. I mean, that's kind of just bad for Kalàxz, right? Posesi doesn't even have that many minions, and Luna being at 4 instead of 3 is not that bad. He just can't play the Drake next turn.
Mana Wraith is worse for the player who's behind.
Generally speaking, yes, but it's also bad for the player who has more minions, right? Nope.
The future is
Not today.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from. I think the Drake there would still have been quite a bit better, but it's a good consolation
I mean,
prize for
you'd be
Kalàxz.
seeing a Mountain Giant be able to come down this turn. If you want a Mountain Giant now, you have to Invocation.
Yeah, that's pretty good for Kalàxz.
Actually, would he have been able to Invocation the Giant last turn?
It would have been...
6. Yeah, he would have been able to take it to... No, he wouldn't have.
No, it wouldn't. It would have gone down to
He
5.
could have double Invocationed it.
Yes, so it would actually have been playable last turn.
But because of the Mana Wraith, it was not.
yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. Okay, I didn't even see that. That's a good spot from you, because that's low-key fantastic for Kalàxz. Because with the Conjurer's Calling off the top as well, Posesi might have been able to snowball this game. And now he's unable to play a Giant.
From his perspective, at least. You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
And I think for Kalàxz here, I think that this is very potentially the Luna's Pocket Galaxy turn.
Was he correct to not just play the Giant, though? Like, he's taking a lot of damage, but pinging every turn. I guess he wants to go for Giant and Conjurer's Calling on the same turn.
Yeah,
it
with
makes
2
sense.
Invocations, he has that next turn.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
So for Kalàxz, you know, you just don't get a clean opportunity to use Luna's Pocket Galaxy that often. It's possible it's just not a priority in this matchup, and board presence is.
Wow. We've seen such a difference from players as to how they feel about Luna's Pocket Galaxy with respect to, do you play it, or do you develop more tempo, more stats on board?
Well, here we go. Kalàxz under the gun. He's got to clear this. There's a way to clear it, though.
Yeah, the Frost Nova and the Snap Freeze does a very good job of clearing off one of them.
Can he play a Sea Giant and do this?
Oh, what with the mirror image?
Can he, yeah, I'm curious if like maybe he can he just pressure this back enough, or does he have to go with the Snap Freeze if he wants to clear both? I think you might have to Snap Freeze to clear both.
I mean, the fact that you know that there is at least one more Conjurer's Calling in your opponent's hand kind of demands that you clear it off.
And I think you get a bit of a sign from Posesi using Invocation that his hand might overall be a bit weak on the back end of it as well. Like your opponent did nothing, and then
That's fair.
Invocation that. Like,
I guess it tells you that they don't have a Cyclone in hand, right, at least.
or they don't have cheap spells with the Cyclone.
Yeah.
They have a heavy hand with this Conjurer's Calling.
I don't think that necessarily indicates weak, because that could indicate cards like Frost Nova or Conjurer's Calling, exactly, which are pretty good as the game progresses.
So, I guess this is one of the big things I'm looking at here is, can you just create board tension and capitalize differently? One of the things I would think about is, for Posesi, does this just mean like maybe he has more Mountain Giants and Sea Giants and stuff in hand? Like, maybe not the hand's not bad, but it's just clunky. Try to capitalize.
I think from Kalàxz, this is not a happy play, but it's one that he has to do. It clears off the board and deals with all the minions, so Conjurer's Calling cannot kill them. And even now, the ability to go for Icicle or Ziliax to clear off the 5-drop to stop double Conjurer's Calling is huge.
Well, now that he's drawn the Drake, I think he's going to eye the Drake again. But I was going to say this is now another Galaxy opportunity. Like,
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
him playing the Drake was a nod to exactly Evocation, Giant, Conjurer's Calling. He paid specific attention to that.
It's true. That's a good point, actually. If he had gone for the Galaxy on 5,
It's a different game.
I mean, he's behind by quite substantially, I think, at that point as well.
At that point, you're looking at him being able to get out of it with big draws instead of with just answering straight up. I think that's something that I often undervalue versus Mage, is just the ability to kill a Giant, kind of at whatever it costs me. There's only a limited number of big Conjurer's Calling targets in a Cyclone Mage deck. So
As we can see here,
when you're able to eliminate them, 2 in a row, they're kind of just out after that.
they really are. As the expected result, the 2 out of 3 to get the Mana Cyclone there does come from Posesi with only 1 Mountain Giant left and 2 Mana Cyclones. It's not bad, because obviously he can generate a lot of spells in the coming turns, but it's not great. He wanted the Giant.
It's the duel. Board presence versus consistency of draw.
What to do?
That's fair.
This is what we asked for.
And it's pretty firmly in favor of Kalàxz at the moment.
I'm not convinced yet. I think we have to see what this Mana Cyclone does. And then kind of gauge it against, like a law of averages as well. There's a lot of redundancy in Mage spells.
Oh, the Drake has been so good this game. Both Drakes have been insanely good.
It's just a good card.
It's just really good.
I want to put Drake and Acolyte in like every single deck I build.
You're a simple man with simple pleasures.
I like Arcane Intellect as neutral, and I like my Chillin' Yetis to be a bit bigger.
One turn away from the triple Conjurer's Calling.
Just Sea Giant?
Sea Giant trade. How does that shape
Do you
out?
need to trade?
I think you probably want to trade to play around Khadgar Conjurer's Calling. But maybe not. Maybe you do just go aggressive.
Is Sea Giant better when you go aggressive to hold in hand so that you can spend mana now and then follow up with Sea Giant?
The thing is with Sea Giant is I think that if your opponent is going to have any chance to come back in the game, the way they do that makes Sea Giant cheap, right? Because the only way they come back is by getting a wide board of stuff.
Yeah.
At which point Sea Giant will very likely be very cheap.
Yeah.
And so I can see the merit for holding it back here and going for Galaxy and Banana Buffoon instead.
I mean, last time he had an opportunity to play it, he just played it. So I don't blame him. The question for Kalàxz is just what's going to give him the most advantage. I feel like Kalàxz is thinking about a lot of things in a more simplistic manner because there's so many variables that
That's
trying to plan something out too cleverly, I feel like, can lead to a pitfall. And that's often the way that I try to size up my games as well. It's like the old adage of keep it simple, stupid. Where if you go too far down the rabbit hole, you're going to end up being in spots where you have no idea what to do with your hand. And wow, what a Mana Cyclone. That is insane.
This turn was absolutely insane. Blizzard and Snap Freeze are both also ridiculously good cards in the Mage Mirror.
That is bonkers. If you could pick 2 cards, you might pick those 2 cards.
You honestly might be right.
What the heck is going on?
And now for Kalàxz, if he does go for... Oh, how does he even capitalize on this? He obviously can make a ridiculously big board on this turn.
That's the thing, is it's hard to look back and see what Kalàxz's game plan would have been like had he cast Luna's Pocket Galaxy on one of the turns he had available. You would just be looking at a different landscape.
Completely different.
It's like when Bob Ross is painting and he just paints that line straight down and it looks ruined and then he fixes it into a tree. Like, Kalàxz has got to turn this into a tree now.
Yeah.
Because right now, I'm not too happy about this position for him.
The problem with these 10 drops, though, is that there's no defensive possibilities. There's no rush and no taunt. And so freeze on these big 10-drop minions just destroys Kalàxz.
Big bad Archmage.
Time runs out on me.
Can he get damage Stegatron? Or the
6 cost.
Sunwalker?
Sunwalker, Safeguard. 6 drops are very powerful defensive options. Or just stuff. I'm worried for both players now.
It's really close. And like Posesi's, the thing that's holding Posesi in this game is the triple freeze. Like, the triple freeze puts him so far ahead.
Yep. The first player to expend freeze and cannot capitalize is typically the one at a disadvantage, and I think we're about to see that snowball. Posesi just has all the freezes.
He really does.
Hey, Conjure's calling again, threat and lethal.
What can Kalàxz do here? Does he, like... Does Posesi trade off the 2-drop as well?
There's just so many Hakars.
Posesi should trade off the 2-drop here, right? Because he pretty much always has lethal, and he just wants to make sure Doomsayer isn't an out for Kalàxz.
I don't know if that's even something you play around. Like, it's just so rare.
Kalàxz can freeze one minion 100% with the Ray of Frost, which means that you would have 16,
I want to push
23,
the damage.
25, yeah.
I like when my minions are alive. I don't think about the Doomsayer thing unless I am 100% positive
You're right.
I've won.
I am getting into Cast Division 2 here, because from where Posesi is at, Kalàxz could have 2 Frost Novas.
Yeah.
Or he could have 1, sorry, because one is
generated a blizzard.
Yeah, exactly.
He could be holding Magic Trick. He could have a Mana Cyclone of his own. I mean, there's so many variables. That's one of the things that I think makes Mage the hardest. There is a technical way to solve all those issues. It'll come up with a balanced range of plays that you make, but there's so many variables that you take a spell count that's generated up by 1 or down by 1, and it's a world of calculations that you have to go through again. It's fundamentals that win these matchups.
Yeah.
When you both have good draws, fundamentals come out on top.
Time runs out on me.
Sometimes it's freezes, but you get what I'm saying.
I do get what you're saying.
Don't get fancy play syndrome.
Another Hakar being activated here for Kalàxz.
He's looking for, I think, sometimes like Mecha'thun or Boom Reaver to be able to attach that Ziliax.
Oh, good point. Good point. Yeah, that would have been a big deal actually. I mean, we can see Blizzard Snap Freeze would have cleaned that up, but that's what he needed to go for.
The life restoration and a big swing. I think that's what he's looking for.
Yep.
And Corrupted Bloods are becoming abundant in players' decks, so draws are becoming dangerous as well.
As now I mean, I think Posesi just goes for Blizzard Snap Freeze, right? Like, it gains him so much damage to kill off the Ziliax.
I guess my question is, do you need to Snap Freeze?
I wonder.
I guess you can count... Oh, well.
Wow.
That makes it a little bit easier.
Wow. That's just...
Or is this just lethal right now?
The
It's just lethal.
Wow. Posesi, as soon as he has an opportunity, capitalizes, and Kalàxz, he's just done.
He's just done. It breaks my heart to see. Kalàxz is a player who I've had so much respect for over last year and even this year as well, grinding away and just missing out on a spot at Grandmasters. But he can hold his head high after a very strong top 8 finish here.
This is one of the toughest wide-range fields that we've ever seen in Hearthstone. There was over 280 players, and every single player, had some sort of meritus status with their invite. And when you see a talent pool that deep, and I was, asking players about it, I've talked to Ike and Bunny Hop, pretty much all the friends that I've had here, I've asked them about it, and they have said, undoubtedly, this is probably one of the hardest tournaments that Hearthstone's ever had if you're going to win it.
Absolutely. But while my commiserations go to Kalàxz, I feel very, very good for Posesi. He's a player who, pretty much all the Grandmasters that I'm talking to here, while he's not that well known in the Western world, they all have so much respect for him. They've played him against him on ladder, they've seen him grinding away in the Cups, and he, I think, is very, very well deserving of coming up the runner-up in Group A in APAC dominance. Tom60229 and Posesi, both putting on very strong performances.
Indeed. The only player that Posesi lost to in this one, in this bracket, was Tom.
That's true.
In the Swiss rounds, only lost to one opponent while there. So if you look at his overall match win rate right now, he is 13-2 so far in the event. And so now 2 more rounds to go if he's going to win the entire thing.
I like a lot of what I'm seeing from him. I'm really glad that it wasn't one mistake that held him up, because I think the more he's playing on that big stage, the more comfortable he will get and the better Hearthstone he will be playing.
No doubt about it. I love to see it, and honestly, I've just been flat out impressed with Posesi's play. So that's going to do it for me and Derek on this match, but we got plenty more Hearthstone coming up because we are playing down to a champion here at the Masters Tour in Las Vegas. So stay tuned. We got plenty more hot Hearthstone action coming at you.